First, to the so-called social media ban, which threatens to place extraordinary restrictions on the internet, driven, of course, by our overzealous lawmakers and power-hungry bureaucrats.
YouTube will join its stablemates in the social media landscape, including Instagram, TikTok and Snapchat, as part of the government's social media ban for those under the age of 16 that will come into effect in December of this year.
The legislation isn't what it first appears to be. Labor went to the election with a very minimalistic sell on these laws. It was about the kids, it was about preventing harm, and it was about only keeping that harm away from vulnerable kids. Communications Minister Anika Wells repeated these slogans this week.
The evidence cannot be ignored that 4 out of 10 Australian kids report that their most recent harm was on YouTube. And as parents, we are really trying our best when it comes to the internet, but it is like trying to teach your kids to swim in the open ocean with the rips and the sharks compared to at the local council pool. We can't control the ocean, but we can police the sharks.
First of all, is this seriously the intellect of the person deciding these laws? A childish analogy about policing sharks in the ocean. It doesn't even make sense. Oceans are dangerous for kids, but you don't ban them. You teach kids how to swim and navigate rips. But even worse, the laws don't make any sense, because for all of the government's bluster about harm on social media, the laws do nothing to prevent harm. All they do is force age verification for account holders. That is it. Children can still access YouTube and watch whatever non-age restricted content that they want. A young journalist known as Leo Puglisi tried to explain this to the ABC this week. He started a digital media company when he was a kid.
From your experience with young people, what are young people using YouTube for?
They're using it for everything. I mean, it's hard to put into words really how widespread YouTube is in terms of its content and in terms of, what could potentially be harder to access. People watch sport on there, they'll watch news, they'll watch entertainment. They will literally be able to watch just about almost everything. And I think it's also really important to mention out of this that all that harmful content that the government's been talking about, which I agree obviously exists, that isn't banned. I think as it stands, I think young people are still going to be able to watch YouTube in a logged out state. So all that harmful content is still actually going to be online. This ban is ineffective. It doesn't actually tackle what the government says it's tackling.
Do these politicians actually think that you're so stupid that you will buy this? The laws don't do what they say they will. So what really is going on here? It isn't even just about social media. Labor also wants to force you to verify your age to have a search engine account. Liberal Senator Alex Antic explains.
The Internet Search Engine Services Online Safety Code, as we've heard today, is set to come into effect in December this year. And what it is going to effectively do is require internet search engine providers to confirm the age of their account holders, amongst a range of other things that we've heard this evening. But the crux to this is, what this will mean is that every Australian will be locked out of their Google account, their Yahoo account, their Microsoft account until they verify their age, which I think is quite incredible. I think it's unbelievable, actually.
If this happens, it is the death of a free and open internet. It has nothing to do with children and everything to do with surveillance. Under these laws and codes, your child will need to hand over sensitive biometric data, facial scans, documents, or some sort of personally identifying information to companies like TikTok the moment they turn 16. TikTok will store that information in servers in Beijing and use it for God knows what. And the saddest thing of all is that we have asked these companies to do it. And some of the people campaigning for this outcome are actually journalists. Can you believe that? Journalists asking for more government surveillance, more restrictions, and the end of a free and open internet. If this bothers you as much as it bothers me, please write to your local member. Show these lawmakers that this path is the wrong one. Well, joining me on the panel this week is Sky News contributor James Bolt and James Willis of the Daily Telegraph. James Bolt, let's start with you. I mean, this is something that our team, your team on skynews.com.au has been covering very closely. And we seem to have come to this situation where children aren't banned, despite all the bluster, despite all of the government propaganda, which journalists are just dutifully, as if they're stenographers, just reprinting these press releases about how we're going to protect kids from harm. Then Anneka Wells stands up at a press conference and says, oh yeah, no, they can just watch it anyway.
Yeah, so what we have here is a case of the government wanting to be seen to be doing something. Now, it started out with a really beneficial, hard to argue with proposition that we do want to protect kids from bullying on Instagram and TikTok and all of the negative mental health effects that were coming there. Then when you get into trying to draft a policy, you're not taking the bird's eye view, you're not taking your time because you have to be doing something as a government. And then we get these things like YouTube, where we bring in these regulations that don't actually stop kids accessing things, but do bring in stuff that Alexandra was talking about age verification. It's the lack of thought through, calm policy making that really gets me on this one. And it's something that governments are just doing over and over again.
Yeah, and James Willis, there's also an element of a political divide which is growing. And the coalition was lockstep in favour of this up until very recently. And now there appears to be this political divide that's breaking out. And the Liberal Party, very unhappy with Julie Inman-Grant, the Safety Commissioner. They have obviously asked for an investigation into the code. And the Liberal Party position now is that this whole search engine verification process, which isn't legislation, it's a code. It is someone who is unelected who is going to enforce this on Australians. They think that that's too much power for one person to have. It's creating the battleground for a very interesting legislative debate.
Yeah, and I also think that where we've had the challenges here, Jack, in the early stages of trying to roll this out is, number one, is trying to say to some parties that they are exempt while other parties are going to be hit with this in full blast. Now, they squibbed it on YouTube by seemingly suggesting that YouTube would be exempt from this and then at the last minute saying, no, YouTube had to be included. But then you've got all these other platforms and you look at the apps that you've got on a mobile phone now, the games, the platforms that kids use. I mean, they're exempting computer games from all of this, live sort of video game sites. So everyone that's exempt is saying, well, how good are we? And everyone else is saying, well, this is unfair. So that was never going to work properly. In regards to some of the Big Brother stuff, I think you're right. Like from the very initial proposition of trying to keep the internet safe for kids, we are now getting to an area where people have the right to be concerned about what data is being shared all over the internet. In saying that, I feel like already, certainly if you've got a social media profile or a LinkedIn profile or any sort of social media online or a website, then a lot of your information is out there. To sort of force this is a different story, and I understand the TikTok concern given they are Chinese owned. But in the early stages, I'm starting to worry about just how widespread this is going to be, whether it goes into the free speech stuff that the government's been trying to get up as well. But I think the big issue here is the divide between saying Instagram are part of this, YouTube are now part of this, but these other platforms that might be harmful for kids, that might be distracting for kids, that might be stopping kids from being kids, are going to get a free ride. So far, you give the government a big fat F for the way that they've rolled this out.
Yeah, it's a lack of clarity on it, James, as well. And I mean, you know, the road to hell is always paved with good intentions. It's that old saying, it's a cliche because it's true. You know, you say that we want to do it for these particular reasons. But at the end of the day, I think the moment that Australians are being asked to scan their face or upload an ID, and we don't even know because the trial has been so riddled with issues that we don't know what mechanism of age verification, the moment you ask people to do this, to access an account to search the internet, all support goes. And I think Labor's going to have a very difficult time selling this to the public.
And I think what's interesting with how Anneka Wells has been pushing it is this idea that, oh, well, I have to do what the E-Safety Commissioner tells me to do. Like, I have to ask her for advice. I've got an article coming out for the Sky News website, shameless plug, this weekend, about how in question time she's asked about why do you reverse YouTube, and she mentions the Safety Commissioner 4 times, and it's like, you know, my hands are tied. It's so reminiscent.
Who is the politician?
Exactly.
Who's the leader?
I didn't elect the Safety Commissioner. You can listen to the Safety Commissioner, but I elected you to do much more than just listen politely. It's very reminiscent of when COVID happened and state governments were like, well, we have to listen to the experts here. We just have to stop the spread.
And E-Safety also made up this advice. It's a survey, it's not research.